Tucker Maddox leans over the rusted edge of the Coast Guard cutter, squinting through the thick gray mist, as if trying to recognize something he knows shouldn't be there. He's been doing this for 17 years: drug intercepts, search and rescues, and once even pulling the bloated corpse of a man who'd vanished for states up the coast, but nothing. Nothing has ever made his chest tighten the way this small white vessel does, bobbing silently in the dead center of the shipping lane, lights flickering like they're underwater. He doesn't say anything to the others, not yet, because if he says it out loud, it becomes real. The name carved into the boat's hull barely visible under algae, and what looks like blood isn't, just familiar. It's a name they were. Ordered not to speak again. You're not watching the news. This isn't a dramatization. You're looking at raw, classified Coast Guard drone footage that never made it to the archive. The audio is distorted, like it's trying to keep something. Out tore in. They tell you what you're seeing was a fluke, a misfiled case, a mistake. But you can feel it, can't you? That sinking weight behind your sternum, that crawling sense that something is deeply wrong, not in the footage, but in you. Like this moment was meant for you. Like it found you. At 2:43 a.m., Officer Maddox radios in that they've boarded the vessel, though no distress signal was ever sent. No registration on radar. No heat signature. The crew films and body cam footage you'll never find online because seconds after stepping aboard, the youngest cadet, Avery Nolan, turns to the camera, whispers something, and disappears. Not off camera, not overboard, just gone. Like she blinked out mid-breath. When they freeze the frame, her mouth is forming a name that doesn't match any in her family, in her contacts, in any national database. But someone watching that footage later would swear it matched his. Here's the part you won't believe until you feel it yourself. When the captain of that ghost vessel finally stepped forward, dry, like he'd never once been in the water, the crew backed off. One by one, Tucker included. Because the name on that man's ID, smudged but unmistakable, was Corwin Maddox, Tucker's brother. Declared dead in 1998, body never recovered. You ever hear a voice in static that shouldn't be there? Feel a pressure in a room? When you're the only one in it? Everyone watching this, your hands are going cold right now because you know what's coming next? And you've known it before you pressed play, because at 3:06 a.m., the radio started receiving a child's voice repeating, a name not even the Coast Guard could trace, and you won't believe what that name was until you realize it's yours. And the voice was you, younger, and it wasn't coming from the boat. Tucker didn't sleep for 3 nights after the footage was reviewed. He didn't speak either, not to his commanding officer, not to his wife, not even to himself. And maybe that silence wasn't grief or shock or protocol. Maybe it was fear of hearing his own voice again and not recognizing it. So after the 3rd replay of the radio logs, something changed. Not in the recording on paper. It was the same sequence. Static. Then a child's voice. Then silence. But to Tucker, it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was his voice. 8 years old. Shaking, half mumbling the name Corwin in a way no child should have known. No memory in his adult mind connected to that moment, no bedtime. Stories, no trauma therapy, revelations. But hearing it triggered something cold and low in his gut, like the moment before you throw up, but stretched out over hours. Sound you feel in your spine. Like your body remembers a secret your mind's been trained to forget. His wife. Laurel began filming him on her phone without telling him. That's how she first caught it when she played the video back. He wasn't in it. Not fully. There was his shape, his shirt, the curve of his arm, but his face. Not motion blur. Like the phone couldn't decide if he was ever really there. She showed it to him in bed, eyes wide, voice trembling, asking him what kind of trick he was playing. And Tucker, watching it loop again and again in the dark, whispered, "That's not me." Laurel stopped sleeping next to him after that. He started noticing the blackouts next. Seconds, sometimes. Like he'd blink and someone was already answering a question he didn't hear. Or he'd park in front of his house and not remember driving there. He started recording everything on a pocket mic, something his brother Corwin used to do, back before the drowning. Not that anyone ever believed Corwin drowned. Not really. Not after the casket came back sealed. Not after what their father whispered once when he was dying, that boy swam backward into time. But the recordings, they weren't consistent. He'd listen back, and sometimes there were sounds he didn't recognize, old radio frequencies, like from the 1940s. Once, a woman humming what he swore was the melody to his mother's lullaby, but his mother had been mute since her stroke in 1995. And then there was the night the tape played his voice again, same as the boat, 8 years old, begging someone not to open a door. No context, just that. Over and over, don't open the red door, don't open the red door. He hadn't said those words out loud since he was a child, and that's when the dreams returned, in them. He's underwater, but the pressure doesn't crush him. He can breathe somehow. The water is thick, black, molasses slow, and he's floating toward a boat that isn't quite there. Not real, not imagined. And standing at the edge is Corwin, older than he was when he died, but frozen in time. And behind him, someone else. A figure tall and thin, with a face that never stays the same. Sometimes Laurel's, sometimes his own, sometimes his son, though he and Laurel never had one. That's when the second character arrives. Not in the dream. In life, a man named Harlan Kess claims he used to serve with Corwin. Back in '97, some deep-water Atlantic station no one's heard of, called Echo Base 4. Tucker looks it up, no such base exists in military records, Harlan shows. Up in person 2 days later, uninvited, with a cigarette that never burns down and a grin like a drunk priest, says he was there the day Corwin vanished. Says he saw something open under the hull of their submersible. Tucker asks, "What opened?" Harlan just says, "You remember more than you think. You were there." But Tucker was 12 when Corwin died. Harlan pulls a tape recorder out of his jacket, plays it. It's Tucker's voice. Older, present day, same coordinates, classified ones, with fear behind each word, like he was recording under duress. The recording ends with Tucker whispering, "Don't let them find the girl, if she remembers. We all drown." Tucker throws up in the kitchen sink, because he's never said those words, but he remembers the cadence, the inflection. His mouth knew them before his mind did. Harlan disappears the next morning. No phone call, no footprint in the driveway. And when Tucker checks his home's security feed, Harlan isn't in a single frame. Tucker is seen talking to empty air, laughing, arguing, like a man slowly slipping into the cracks between realities. Laurel watches the footage too. That night, she leaves the house and doesn't come back. Tucker doesn't follow. He goes into the attic and pulls down the old boxes. Childhood photos, VHS tapes. One is unlabeled. He plays it. It's him, age 8, sitting in front of the TV, Corwin behind the camera, joking, telling Tucker to wave. Tucker's eyes are hollow. Then, mid-laugh, his face twists. He starts screaming high and sudden and terrified. He turns to Corwin and begs him again. "Don't open the red door. Don't let them out again." Corwin drops the camera. The footage goes black. And Tucker, sitting alone in the present, realizes his nose is bleeding. He checks the closet where the tapes were stored. There's a small door behind the insulation he doesn't remember ever seeing before, painted red. His hands start shaking, and then the radio crackles on, even though it's unplugged. The voice on the other end isn't his, but it knows his name, and it asks a question that makes his knees buckle. "Tucker, when did you forget you died?" He tries to respond, but the words won't come. His tongue feels too thick, his chest too tight. The room distorts, not spins, but stretches, like space itself is pulling him out of sync. He blacks out and wakes. Up in Echo Base 4, only this time, it's not underwater. It's above the clouds. Windows. Looking down on oceans that move in reverse, Corwin's voice echoes from a hallway that leads nowhere. Laurel's laugh weaves through the vents, though she never once turns up in the flesh. Harlan is waiting in a room with walls made of mirrored screens, each one playing a different version of Tucker's life, some where Corwin lived, some where Laurel never met him. one where Tucker himself is the captain of the ghost vessel, and one screen. One single screen is black dot, but flickering as if waiting to load. And Tucker understands, without knowing why, that whatever is on that screen, he's not supposed to see it. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's true. It was calling you. Back now, tell me. When was the last time you checked if your memories were really yours? Now here's the part you were never meant to hear. The cadet who vanished Avery Nolan? There's a new video clip. It's found buried in a damaged Coast Guard backup drive. It's time-stamped weeks after the disappearance. She's staring into a handheld camera. Whispers, if you're watching this, they haven't gotten to you yet. You need to remember. She pauses, as if she hears something behind the camera, then leans in and says a name. Your name. And the screen cuts to black. As if you were always meant to finish this story, but not the way you think. Because the truth behind what no one tells you is that you were never the one watching. You've been the one being watched. Ask ChatGPT CHAPTE there. Lied to you. But they told you just enough truth to keep you quiet, Tucker. Maddox sat on the shoreline of a place he didn't remember driving to, boots damp, salt on his knuckles, a thin line of dried blood along the curve of his wrist. The coast was too calm. The seagulls circled above but made no sound. Behind him, the rental car idled softly, though the keys were in his pocket. He didn't remember starting it. His phone had reset itself during the drive. The clock blinked 0 o'clock, stuck. The compass app spun like it had lost direction entirely. The audio recordings he always used to track his waking hours all gone. Files erased, placed by a single clip he didn't remember saving. It was only 6 seconds long. A child whispering, "The red door is already open." And then silence. Except not empty silence. That kind of silence that hums beneath your teeth. That lives in your bones. That knows your name better than you. Dewey thought it had been about Corwin, his brother, the sealed coffin, the classified boat, the vessel with the name that shouldn't have returned. For weeks now, it had all pointed back to that singular trauma, that singular mystery. Story of grief twisted into conspiracy. He thought he was pulling on a thread that led toward closure, toward understanding, maybe even healing. But what he found instead was the box. A wooden crate buried beneath the sand. Not 2 feet from where he'd stopped walking, like something had guided his legs while his mind slept. It wasn't marked by any Coast Guard insignia, no tag, no timestamp. Just initials scorched into the lid, CM. Corwin Maddox. Inside, an old VHS tape, wrapped in plastic. A photo of the two of them from childhood, both boys staring at something off camera, mouths slightly open, fear frozen on their faces. He had no memory of the moment that photo was taken. None. But he knew it was real.
All the dog tags resting on.
Top of the tape confirmed it his brother's military ID. It's blackened like it had been in a fire, but whole. He took it as the answer. The lost clue. The key, Tucker drove 3 hours back to the house. Hooked up the dusty VCR in the attic. Watched. The screen flicker, heart pounding, breath tight. The tape crackled to life. It was grainy footage, time-stamped 1997. Date matching the week, Corwin disappeared. There were 6 men on screen. A small control room. Dim, with red lights overhead. The men weren't in uniform, just hooded jackets. And sterile gloves, one of them, Tucker recognized. Harlan Kess, laughing, leaning against a console. In the background, audio played a hum, warping in pitch every few seconds. It's like a digital signal that had lost its pattern. And on a small screen behind them, underwater sonar imagery looped over and over, revealing a structure. Tucker paused. The tape, that wasn't a wreck. It wasn't a submarine. It looked like a room, underwater, with corners, straight, symmetrical. The men on the tape didn't acknowledge the anomaly directly. But they spoke in clipped phrases that made Tucker's stomach twist. It's not a machine. No, it's observing us. We're not mapping it. It's mapping me. What's on the other side of memory? Then the camera cut. Static, new location. Closer now, the ocean lab. One of the men standing in front of a sealed door. It's painted red. He was whispering something. Tucker leaned forward, and that's when his own voice, aged 8 years old, came through the speakers. Don't open it. Please don't. You're not supposed to what lives in forgetting. The man opened the door anyway, and the screen went black. Tucker felt like he'd stopped breathing. This was it. This was proof. Of what? He didn't fully know, but it was real. He had the footage, the voice, the door, the event started. To weep not from relief, but from recognition. Because this wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a memory. He remembered that door. He remembered the humming, remembered the pain in his skull, how it pressed like his brain was being rewired in real time. And he remembered what came after. The blankness. The 2 years of his life he'd never been able to explain. Age 8 to 10. The therapists chalked it up to developmental trauma. His parents said he'd withdrawn after Corwin's death. But it was more than that. It was like someone had cut out the reel of his childhood, taped over it, then played it back on loop so fast he'd forgotten there was ever more. And now, he'd remembered. He sat there, shaking, empty on the attic floor. He had it, the mystery uncovered, the hidden truth. He wasn't crazy. It lied, all of them. And then it happened. The light in the attic flickered. Just once, the VCR ejected. The tape on its own, and the television began playing something else. No source, no input channel, just a home video, dated 1995. The backyard. Summer. A small birthday party. Tucker, 6 years old, in the background, laughing, running in circles with another boy. But that boy wasn't Corwin, and it wasn't a neighbor. Tucker's heart stopped, because the boy in the video, he looked exactly like him, not similar. Not like a twin dot identical, right down to the scar behind the ear he never could explain. The video continued. Mode. At one point, the camera zoomed in to far, catching the boy's face full on, and he smiled. But it wasn't a child's smile. It was old, deep, knowing, and Tucker heard himself. On the tape, laughing in the background, saying the words he had just said in the attic. I had it. I finally remembered. The boy on the screen turned toward the camera, looked directly into it, and said, "No, you remembered what I gave you." Tucker stood up fast, knocking over a box of storage files. Papers spilled. Old records. One fell. Face up. Psych Evil. T. Maddox, age 10. Memory glitch syndrome. Unreliable recall, and below it, in red ink, subject exhibits symptoms of reimplantation slippage. Recommends second wipe. He started to hyperventilate. None of this was resolution. This was script. He was following something. Something that had been inside his memories. It's controlling what he saw, how he remembered it, feeding him breadcrumbs toward a false end, letting him think he had one. That he'd uncovered the hidden truth, but it was only one layer. The real danger wasn't the mystery. It was that he had believed it ended there. He ran from the attic, downstairs, out into the night. He didn't stop until he reached the shore again, miles away, barefoot, bleeding. He dug his hands into the sand and screamed, and the ocean answered, not with waves, but with silence. Thick watching behind him. Streetlights flickered. The sound of static rose, low and metallic. He turned, and there, standing in the middle of the road, was Corwin. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as something wearing his skin, smiling. And beside him stood the boy from the tape. Still 6, still smiling, still him. Tucker's voice cracked. "What are you?" And the boy replied, "I'm the part of you they couldn't erase." And the lights blew out. Darkness consumed the frame, and in that final moment, seconds before everything, cut to black, a single image appeared. The sonar map from Chapter 1. But now the structure under the water had changed. The door wasn't just open, it was gone, and the shape of what had stepped through it was watching you rewatch everything. Nothing you saw was random. The lie wasn't in the mystery. The lie was the ending. They'd been watching him longer than he realized. Not just since the ghost boat, not just since Corwin. Long before the attic tapes, before the dreams. Before he ever stepped onto that vessel, before the cadet vanished. before the boy in the footage smiled. Tucker Maddox wasn't the subject of the story. He was the experiment, reaching self-awareness. And somewhere, others were watching him remember that. He didn't find the next clue on purpose. It came to him through an anonymous email sent to a forgotten backup account, one he hadn't logged into in years. No subject line, no message body. Just a 3-second clip attached. Found footage from 20 years ago, static heavy shot of an interrogation room. The timestamp read 2005. The room was windowless. The camera trembled, not from movement, but from frequency, like the signal itself was breaking under pressure. At the table, a woman, mid-30s, pale, shaking. Her eyes darted, not out of fear, out of awareness. She kept glancing toward the mirror on the wall, not a reflection, the space beside it where the reflection didn't quite match the angle of her shoulder. Her mouth opened like she was about to confess something no human should ever remember, but instead, she whispered, "There are others. He's not alone. They just don't know what they're looking for yet." Then the footage cut. No trace of the file on Tucker's hard drive afterward, just a corrupted thumbnail. And this wasn't paranoia. I hadn't told anyone about the red door, the boy, the false tape. Laurel was still gone. Harlan had vanished. Corwin, whatever Corwin had become, wasn't answering to the name anymore. Tucker began looking in places he didn't remember knowing about. Abandoned message boards, dead military forums, urban explorer forums locked behind paywalls. Some posts had been archived, frozen in time by users who no longer existed. Others were still active, but only to a few. A handful of usernames reappeared across multiple platforms. Decades apart, some wrote in sentence fragments. Others posted nothing but symbols, spirals carved into stone. Door frames drawn in ash, eyes with slashes through them. But the thing that bound them all? The phrase, "I didn't remember it until it happened again." That was the key. The memories weren't building toward something, they were echoes of something already done. Every post, every message, every cryptic upload pointed to one date: August 5, 2005. Exactly 20 years ago to the day. That was the real blackout. The real breach. Tucker went through old Coast Guard logs. August 5th, 2005. No anomalies listed. But weather satellites showed a 2-hour gap in cloud data over a 5-mile radius of ocean. Like the sky forgot itself, like something slipped through and had to be rewritten. He printed out what little he could find and drove to the last remaining physical library, with unrestricted microfilm in the state. He found nothing in the newspapers. But in the margins of a microfiche record for the local tide charts, someone had carved 3 symbols: a triangle inside a circle, an inverted eye, and a third one he recognized without knowing how. A child's face split in two. Next to it, barely legible, written in graphite, "You were right all along. Just not about who you are." He left the library and vomited behind the car. It wasn't fear, it was the pressure. A slow realization that everything he'd clung to as self, his name, his voice, his place in the world, was written in dry erase. Marker on a glass wall someone else had been scribbling on. That night, the dreams returned, only they weren't his. He was in an office he didn't recognize, sitting at a desk he somehow knew belonged to him. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Across from him sat a man with eyes like static. The room flickered. Files appeared and disappeared across the desk. Blueprints for rooms that didn't exist. Photographs of faces Tucker had never seen but felt like he should know. Then the man said, "You kept asking where the others are. You never thought to ask what you are to them." And suddenly, Tucker wasn't dreaming. He was remembering that office. That man. That day, he was one of them. The others, the silent ones behind the mirror, he had watched someone else break, down just like he was breaking now. And he had written, "Memory containment failed. Identity degradation in progress." This wasn't haunting. It wasn't conspiracy. This was containment breach. And now, something was escalating. The symbols were showing up in real life. A chalk spiral on his mailbox. a red triangle etched into the condensation of his bathroom mirror, a sticker on the back of a bus seat printed with the words, "You're not crazy, they lied to you," and the others, whoever they weren't just symbols anymore. They began showing up in reflection. The woman in the laundromat window who looked just like his third-grade teacher, down to the chipped nail polish but blinked too slowly. To be human, the teenager in the gas station mirror, whose face changed when Tucker turned to look directly at him, and the man clean-shaven, wearing his same jacket, watching him from across the diner, mouthing the words, "It's not your first time through."
Ashy.
Tucker couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every reflective surface held a trace of something watching back, something curious, something that knew him. And in every dream, the same child returned his face, but not older and younger at the same time, and always saying the same thing. "You still think you're waking up?" The walls were breaking. Time wasn't running forward anymore. It was looping, but not like a circle, like a spiral. Every return deeper than the last. Every realization more unbearable. And the worst part wasn't the lies or the era. It was the truth that kept bleeding through. The memories weren't being stolen, were being fed back to him in a specific sequence by someone or something. An observer they called themselves, Marrow, in one of the forums. No name, no face. It's just one audio clip uploaded to a now-deleted server. It was a whisper loop, voice rasping, just 6 words. "They sleep in the pieces you forgot." The more he listened, the more it changed. First playthrough, it was just the whisper. Second playthrough, a second voice joined in his own, speaking from somewhere far off, like underwater. Third playthrough, child crying in the background. Fourth, silence. And then the fifth on loop. The audio file started before he pressed play, like it knew. That's when he noticed the comments, not posted. Publicly hidden in the site's HTML, obfuscated code buried deep in invisible metadata. A transcript of conversations between people, using only initials. They were watching someone, talking about containment drift, about conscious re-entry, about someone who was waking up faster this time. Then, "We lost track subject TMO5. He's cracked too far down. Re-scrambled, unsuccessful." Then, begin prep on TMO6. Inject false resolution. Loop until integration. The initials. Mo5. Tucker Maddox. He wasn't the first. He wasn't even the first version of himself. Each revelation wasn't a discovery. It was permission to remember until he broke, until the memory dissolved the illusion of self and the others. They weren't out there, scattered alone. They were watching from here in the symbols, the glitches, the flickers in footage, the wrong dates on hospital records, the photos of people you swear you almost recognize. That strange nostalgia you feel for places you've never been, that word on the tip of your tongue that never existed. You were right all along. You do remember something no one ever told you. The government did. It's covered up. But not just an event, a system of erasure, of re-entry of containment. Tucker's last message was never posted. It was found, handwritten on the wall of an abandoned radio tower just off Route 70, scrawled in loops, over and over, nearly carved into the concrete. "I am not the first Tucker. Something is watching through us. Something is watching through us." And below that, in a child's handwriting, "I remember you." The tape ends there, but only this time, because the screen glitches once, just enough to show a frame that shouldn't exist. You watching, mouth slightly open, just like the photo in the box, just like the others, and now you feel it, don't you? Heaviness behind your eyes, that whisper in your jawbone, the cold. Recognition you've been here before, but they've never let you finish it. Not until
Not until you saw yourself.
But if that's true, who's recording you?